Okay, we are live. Hello, Stella.
Hi.
In fact, I should say we are live. That's something that I can actually say in English. Normally, when I do live streams
True.
with you, we're speaking Esperanto.
No, it's very weird. I will have to get used to the idea that I have to speak English actually, because
Yes.
every time I meet someone who speaks Esperanto, it's just like, why would you use any other language? It doesn't matter that
Hmm.
we speak other languages as well. If there is Esperanto, that's it, you know?
Exactly. It's very taboo in Esperanto society to crocodili, or in your case, alligatori, I guess, to speak
Yeah.
your native language or speak some other language other than Esperanto. Anyways, so I have to apologize. I am streaming this to both my Esperanto YouTube channel and my English channel. And Stella and I decided that today we would speak I'm sorry, we normally speak Esperanto, but today we decided we would speak English, just for the sake of people who don't know about Esperanto. Por Esperantigu Ealing.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work, but
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? Maybe someone will
yeah.
learn a little bit. So, I guess before we go any further, since we're doing this in English for people who don't know about Esperanto, maybe we should discuss a little bit what is Esperanto for those who haven't heard of it or have heard of it and don't know what it is. Do you want to?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I don't know if you wanted to. Do you have like a prepared answer?
No, no, I don't.
No,
My answer is different every time.
but it's Esperanto's birthday tomorrow,
Oh,
so we're right
yes.
on time. Yeah,
Yes, perfect.
and yeah, so it's a constructed language. I think that's the term we like using these days. I would
Oh,
have said artificial just a few years ago, but
yeah.
it's a constructed language, and there was a guy called Zamenhof who actually created it in the 19th century. And so tomorrow, Esperanto is going to be 135 years old,
Mm,
which basically just marks the day when the first book was published or got into the shops, probably, whichever that is, that you could actually get the book and learn it. So obviously, he had worked on it a bit before
yes.
publishing a book on it, but that's what we celebrate, or that's what we just picked as a date because it makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. So, yeah, so Esperanto is a constructed language. Now, I can, I know you grew up with Esperanto, so
Yeah.
you never had an event or a situation similar to this. But I remember first learning about Esperanto maybe 10, 12 years ago, and kind of thinking that it seemed a lot very similar to like Elvish or Klingon or something like that, and thinking, why would someone spend countless hours learning a fictional language?
Yeah.
Why put in all the time and effort and energy? Um, and
Because it's worth it.
yes,
Apparently it's worth it. Yeah, I'm a native speaker, which is kind of rare, I guess. There are not many people, but not just a handful. There are more than that. We don't know how many. I would say around 1,000, maybe. That sounds like a number that I can accept. That feels okay. I can imagine that there are a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000 native speakers of this language. And yeah, I think about it. Would I have heard about Esperanto? Probably I would have heard about it, but when and would I have been interested to learn it at all? I don't know. But yeah, that's those are the questions I will not have answered. So, when was the first time you heard about it? What was it?
um, so I want to say probably around 2010, 2009, something like that. My family was very, very late to getting the internet when I was a teenager. And so we were one of the last people I knew who got the internet. And then all of a sudden, we got this computer, we got access to the internet, and I started spending all my time on there. It was great because I love learning things. And so I discovered Wikipedia, and there's just vast amounts of knowledge that you can learn from reading Wikipedia. Obviously, you have to be careful with determining, what you think is actually credible information. But most of the stuff on Wikipedia is pretty good. So I remember I was reading actually about micronations, or like what would you say, like debated nations, or countries that are like self-proclaimed nations that are not accepted by the UN or by any other country. Anyways, there was this. It was an island. It's called like Insulo de la Rosa, de la Rosso, or something like that. Rose Island. And this was like a very, very small, like man-made island off the coast of Italy in the 60s or something like that. And the guy who built this man-made island declared independence from Italy, and he named his country Rose Island, or Island of the Rose, and he declared that the national language of his country would be Esperanto. And so I read that and I thought, Esperanto, what's that? And then I opened, so then I click on that link, and I'm sure I probably opened up Wikipedia that day to learn something, get help on my homework or something like that. But you know how Wikipedia goes. You just keep going deeper and deeper into random.
It's like YouTube. Like you
Yes.
start somewhere and then.
Yes, 100%. And then all of a sudden I'm reading about this constructed language that was, it's over 100 years old, 150 years old or something like that. And there's millions of people, or we don't know how many people, some people say millions of people, several hundred or thousands of native speakers. And I thought, why do people spend so much time and money and energy learning a language that no one speaks, or it doesn't have a country, like, some guy just made it up. So I guess now people speak it, but I was like, why would you do that? And so that was the first time I ever learned about Esperanto. And I didn't start learning it at that time. I just had it in the back of my mind as something that's a little odd. But interesting. I mean, it's not that I thought it was a bad thing. I found it to be very interesting, but at that time I actually wasn't interested in languages. I was a little bit interested in Spanish, but otherwise I wasn't interested in languages until a few years later when I lived in El Salvador. And then I decided to start learning a few other languages. And I learned that Esperanto is supposedly one of the easiest languages in the world to learn. And then I thought that sounded pretty cool. And in my experience, that's 100% correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that also applies for native speakers, but as far as learning Esperanto as a second language, it is way easier than Spanish.
Well, that's what I heard. I mean, of course, what makes a native speaker is that my parents spoke in Esperanto to me. So that's it. I mean, I learned it as you learned English probably. So that was it. It was immersion, right? And that's it. But what I heard throughout all these years, speaking to, of course, many, 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 many non-native speakers, is that they started learning it because they thought they could not learn a language, that they were not smart enough to learn a language. And actually they are. And they figured it out through Esperanto. And then they thought, oh, if I could learn Esperanto, then maybe I can get started with other languages as well. And maybe that would be helpful if they spoke Esperanto first, because there were these theories about it. And it's actually true. So, yeah, that's what I heard. Of course, I don't have my own experience about that. No.
Sure. I have heard people say before that Esperanto is a good, what would you say, like a starter language, in the metaphor that I've heard. I want to say Tim Morley makes this point, is that it's similar to learning a recorder in school. I don't know if you do that in Hungary, but at least in America, it's very common for third grade students to pick up a little flute and a recorder. And it's like a piece of plastic and it sounds terrible. And it's not the fact that they're trying to fill the world with people who know how to play the recorder. But we teach this to third graders because third grader can't play the tuba, or the cello. And it's like an entry level gateway into learning other instruments. The parallel there is that Esperanto is so much easier to learn than Spanish or French or German or Russian, that it's like kind of getting a gateway and interest in learning language, and it helps you learn about grammar words, what they would call like metalinguistic words, but in a much easier way, Esperanto being maybe 10, 15, 20 times easier to learn than some other languages.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's right. Yeah. And then you realize you have these realizations about your own language through learning Esperanto. So there are some grammar things that you suddenly understand about your own language.
Yes.
Because you learn Esperanto. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I actually have had several of those experiences. One just today, as I was reading Esperanto grammar on lernu.net, and I studied linguistics in college. I'm currently working on my master's degree in linguistics, so I know a lot about languages and grammar.
You should,
like
yeah.
And still to this day, and I literally mean today, like this morning, as I was drinking my tea and reading over some Esperanto grammar, just learning Esperanto has helped me realize some grammatical functions and some just tendencies of human language that I didn't even realize before. And it really helps make that kind of stuff more concrete when you're actually seeing it in a real language, as opposed to just learning the theory of linguistics.
And what else? What else did you manage to use Esperanto for? Because it's very helpful this way, honestly. Even if you're not really interested in languages, even then you have some realizations. Even then you have some thoughts where you're like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, I never had this kind of perspective on my own language. And
yes.
You think about it.
Yes, absolutely. It does help you think more clearly about grammar and about language itself, and kind of expand your mind in that area. But there are many, I think there are many good reasons to learn Esperanto. Like I said, when I first learned about Esperanto, I was not at all interested in actually learning it. But I did see Esperanto sort of as a stepping stone to start learning other languages. And so originally, that's why I wanted to do it. And also because I did think it would help me sort of learn grammar and learn linguistics a little bit more clearly, which it did.
Yeah, but can I ask you, who convinced you, about this? So what did you have to hear or read that you think, okay, I will truly give this a try?
Okay.
What was it?
So when I lived in El Salvador, one of the huge things that I wanted to accomplish when I lived there was learning Spanish. And so I really threw myself into learning Spanish, and that was a great experience. That's also, at the same time, I got interested in helping some of my friends learn English. And I was spending all day long talking about languages, either Spanish or English. And I realized that I loved languages. So then I started looking into linguistics. I started looking into the secrets of learning languages. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to become a polyglot. I just wanted to start learning lots of languages. And so I looked into what language is easiest to learn first, and I saw Esperanto. And I had no interest in Esperanto in and of itself. I just saw learning Esperanto as a tool to help me learn other languages and to help me learn more about linguistics. And that's really what sold me on starting Esperanto. But I actually never thought I would continue and dedicate countless hours and be going to conventions and spending all my money on airplane tickets and all this kind of stuff. I never thought I would go that far.
You have a YouTube channel even.
Yes, I'm creating my own YouTube channel only in Esperanto. Well, mostly in Esperanto, let's say. The thing that convinced me to start doing that, to take the next step into Esperanto, was the culture of it, the people.
Okay.
Which I
so
did
what
not...
is it? This is an important question. Like, what do we understand as Esperanto culture? Like, how do you see it? What is it when you're talking about that?
Yeah, well,
It's so difficult to explain,
complicated.
right?
It's
But let's just
complicated.
try. Yeah.
Yeah. It's complicated to explain, even to, even if I was just talking to you, we might have a hard time explaining it. And we both understand a lot about Esperanto culture.
Yeah.
But especially trying to explain this to people who are outside and don't see it, there's so many facets to this. But I would say that Esperanto culture is very accepting and embracing of many different types of people. It's a worldwide thing, and we embrace people from all different cultures. And I have sort of noticed that when I go to Esperanto events, gatherings, congresses, things like that, I notice that there is a tendency to accept people who maybe are very often weirdos, or they don't really fit in, and then all of a sudden they find a place to fit in, and they're loved, and they're part of a community, and that's beautiful. But it goes a lot. It goes way deeper than that. Now Esperanto has been around for what, 140 years, 140,
135 tomorrow.
135
officially.
years.
Yeah.
There's
Several generations, right? Even if you
Yes.
got started very early, you should be in the 5th or something generation by now.
For sure. I mean, it's a very long, it is a new language in terms of languages that exist in the world today, but now there's a lot of precedent. There's literature in Esperanto. There's a very dedicated history, or there's a lot of historians who study Esperanto over the ages. And just recently, a few weeks ago, I was at NOSC, the North American summer courses.
Yeah,
it's essentially summer camp for Esperanto for adults. But and I was in the intermediate speaker group, and what we did was we spent a lot of time reading Esperanto, like classic literature, which I might have to explain, because it sounds so weird for there to be like classic literature in a constructed language, But we're reading like who are some William Auld, Julio Baggy or Bogi.
Bogi, yeah, Hungarian, yeah.
Hungarian. There's several very famous Hungarians.
Yeah.
We were reading some of the things by Zamenhof himself, and it's very odd for me to think that now, like, in some way, this is a culture that I'm a part of. I'm an American, I'm from the United States, and we have a long history of American literature and culture, and we have, lots of famous Americans and presidents and things like that. But now I'm also part of more of a worldwide thing that's not just my country, and it doesn't belong to any one country. It kind of belongs to everyone, and it feels great to be a part of that.
It's so funny because you talk about US culture, and then I think, well, I'm Hungarian, we have more years, experience, history, and all that. For me, US culture is like tiny.
Sure.
It started quite late compared to some countries here in Europe.
Right.
But,
Well, yeah, and so Esperanto is sort of the same way. It is interesting. In my hometown, the oldest building is from, I want to say, 1835 or something. So nearly, not even 200 years old. But then I go to Virginia, where my wife is from, and the history there is so old. It goes sometimes back to the 1600s. And for us Americans, that's extremely old, But then I go to Europe, and I was in Spain a few years ago, and they think that some of the first Europeans were there 9,000 or 10,000 years ago, and that really puts things into perspective for me. But
yeah, it's not just for you. I mean, that's a very good point. Putting things into perspective, like you learn that through Esperanto culture, because you're exposed to a lot more cultures, many people, many different people, truly different, and then you realize the beauty in the difference, I'd say, and really putting things into perspective. I mean, that's what the language gave me as a native speaker, that I could do that from an earlier age because I was exposed to bigger diversity of people than if I had just grown up in Hungary as a Hungarian, without the traveling, without the people coming to Budapest and just spending time with them. And for instance, just something that I picked up at a very young age, and that's probably true for pretty much all native speakers, is that you hear someone speak Esperanto and then you have an idea of their native language because the accents you can hear straight away. But then later on, that helps you with other languages as well. So, if someone spoke Esperanto with a German accent, then there is no right or wrong with that. It's just that you can hear that, very early on, oh, this is a French person or a French speaker, not necessarily a French person, but someone who has as a native language French, or someone from Slavic background, etc. Because what kind of mistakes they would make. No one speaks perfect Esperanto. I make Hungarian mistakes because that's my other language. Not many times, of course, but I do make mistakes. And with Esperanto, there is no way of, speaking it perfectly. And that's true for all the languages in the world. And I think that's what can give you more confidence about learning other languages as well. This chasing of perfection can fall away very fast, because with Esperanto you start speaking faster because it's an easier language, and you just expose yourself and you try, and I would say the success rate is you have success faster than with other languages. That's what I would say. But I was interrupting you, so I'm sorry.
No, fine. So are both of your parents Hungarian?
No. One is French, one is Hungarian.
French and Hungarian. So do you speak French as well?
Yeah, I didn't learn from my father, unfortunately, because he died when I was really young, so I couldn't learn from him. But I speak bad French, and of course, I don't have a beautiful French accent. I don't. It's okay. It's fair enough. But but they met at an Esperanto event. But that's not the only reason why you would have, children speaking Esperanto. But in my family, it was truly the shared language. So my father didn't speak Hungarian. My mom does speak French. So, but that wasn't,
They would speak Esperanto to each other at home, though.
Of course, and to me and to my sister, and that was our shared language. So,
And did you grow up going to Esperanto events?
Yeah, very much so.
So, were there other children that you could play with and speak Esperanto?
Yeah, it's interesting that actually the event for Esperanto families, so it's quite strict. So truly for families that use Esperanto at home, that event got started in Hungary because there were families who were like, we should find the other families and the other children so that our children can speak, with other children as well in Esperanto, that it's not only our family, because these families can be quite isolated. There are not that many families per city or town or region even. And this event is happening right now again in Hungary this year after COVID, it got canceled, and now it's back. And so I grew up going to these events as well. And actually, we are going to meet very soon at the World Congress. And it has a section for children. So I went to those when I was a kid, when it was in Europe. So when it was close to us, when it was, affordable relatively. I mean, it's always expensive to travel, but I would go to those events as well. And they're some of my most treasured memories. I mean, it was amazing. It was truly amazing. So I went to those versions. So parents went to the Congress, and me and my sister, we went for the part for the children,
The children. So what kind of things do they do in the children's Esperanto gatherings?
Well, it's just fun. It's a lot of games, depending on the ages of the children. I mean, there are quite big differences, right? We're in groups, we sing, we play. Of course, it's summer, so swimming, lake, doing like theater, like small plays, doing. Yeah, I remember there were these logic tasks that were translated to Esperanto, drawing, painting, lots of, yeah, these things that you do in summer camps in
So
general.
really just normal fun kid thing
Yeah,
to
and
do,
just
right?
being together. And of course, there are many cultures. So many of the children bring, for instance, things from home to show. So, and of course, we learn about the local culture because we are somewhere, right? I mean, when I was in Finland, it was so very different from Hungary. You know what a Finnish summer is, learning about saunas and, like being in the woods and just the landscape. And it's so much fun. And yeah, as children, it's diversity. And of course, the people who put the program together, they're awesome. So they want us to have a good time. And yeah, we are. I remember I was always in rooms with the same age, probably the same age. And there are of course siblings going together most of the time, because otherwise it could be quite scary. You're abroad,
Mhm.
you're quite young. So there are helpers, older kids, 16, 18, who help the younger ones. It was awesome as a kid to go to these events. Yeah.
That sounds like a blast.
No, honestly, it's just really some of my most beautiful memories, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a little envious of that. That sounds like something I would have loved as a kid. But it's one of those things where the Esperanto, and it sounds weird if you've never experienced it, but Esperanto, it really does have its own culture, and it's not even necessarily all centered on the language itself.
No.
Like Esperanto, the language is sort of what brings a lot of people together to these events. But once everyone is together, then at that point, the language almost isn't even necessary anymore for us to, kind of still accomplish a lot of the same tasks that we want to do. It's so much deeper than just coming and learning to improve your grammar.
That's also true, but Esperanto can also be looked at just as a tool.
Sure.
It's much fun using it as the language itself is fun, I would say, the way we can use it. So just because it's simple, it doesn't mean that we cannot express everything and the most complex issues in the world. And at the same time, usually I tell my friends, it's like scouting, that these are scouts. And when scouts get together, they are also so very happy because they have so many similarities, and then they are rejoicing about the differences as well, and learning about each other. So a world jamboree is so much fun because you're just like, oh, these are also scouts, and they live here and they live there, and they, and we are same, but we are different, but it's awesome. And it's just really the same thing. And it's a way to meet people really from diverse background. And, if you are interested in that, or if you're open to that, then Esperanto is awesome for that. If you're not interested in that, then fine. It's okay. I mean, there are other ways to experience this. So I can understand. It's not the only way. It's just one of them. And language and being able to have a conversation and speak. Yeah, I mean, we can speak English as well, but this is very different. This is just very different. The experience is very different, exactly because of the language, because it does construct the way we have a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said it very well. That's like I said earlier. So I came into Esperanto just interested in the language aspect itself, and that's I just wanted to dip my toes in the little bit of the linguistics of it. But then I got sucked in by everything else that surrounds the Esperanto movement and Esperanto community. But there is something to be said for just the language itself as well, like you mentioned. Which there's large. Well, they've never completely been successful, but I know there's been pushes for different international organizations to adopt Esperanto on purely practical matters.
It would be very practical, but people
Yes.
don't believe that, you know. They are
Mhm.
just like, and that's when you start protecting your own language as if
Mm,
it's a threat to your own language, but it's
right.
just not a threat. But it's very difficult to understand how, you know, it's not a threat, because Esperanto doesn't, you know, the creator of Esperanto, but Esperanto speakers today, they don't want to tell you don't learn English as your native language if that's where you're born and that's what's
Mm,
spoken there. They just say this should be the second language that you learn, just to have something else as well that you can share in common with other people. And when I was young, and when I heard so many people talk about their own native languages and how they were threatened and how they were learning Esperanto because of that, I mean, I couldn't really understand it, what they were talking about, because, you know, I never felt threatened about
mhm,
Hungarian. It's not that it's going to disappear soon.
right.
There are many, many speakers of it, even if it's a small country. I mean, when millions of people speak a language, that's just not going to disappear from one day to the other. But
Sure.
there are so many languages that are threatened, um, you know, politically, not just that they are actually pushed out, you know, and played down. That culture is not that important, but so much is lost when a language is lost. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Now I understand it as an older person. As a kid, I just didn't understand what people were talking about.
mhm,
But the more I hear about it, the more I understand that that's also a reason why many people learned Esperanto, because they believe in this, that this could help save their languages in a way, and that they can advocate for their languages. Yeah.
well, that reminds me of a story I read. I don't I don't remember necessarily all the details of this, so maybe
Hmm.
someone, you or someone in the chat can fill the rest of this in if you happen to know. But I think I remember hearing there's like sort of an ironic twist of fate in history where Esperanto actually came very close to being adopted by the United Nations, or
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
it came within a few votes of, was it the United Nations?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was the French who decided
Yeah.
that it shouldn't be
Exactly.
adopted because
Yeah.
they wanted to protect French's sort of reputation as the international language. And and then unfortunately for them, French kind of was put off to the wayside anyways when English became a more dominant language. Um, but it's such a shame. There's just so much to recommend Esperanto as a very useful, neutral second language for the world, um, as well as being so much easier to learn than French or English. If everyone just put in a little bit of effort to learn this neutral language, then um, it could save so much time and energy and money and translator fees and miscommunication and all these things.
Yeah, but it also shows that, you know, today we speak English. It's clearly a very important language right now. But I do remember when it wasn't like that. You know, nowadays people think that English is the thing, you know, this is the language you should speak, you should learn. Probably it's currently that happens to be true, but it wasn't that long ago that it really wasn't like that. You know, it didn't
Mhm.
used to be like that. And French was incredibly important in Europe, German, obviously. And then if we go back even further, I mean, Latin, etc. So it's not a given which language is going to be next. And yeah, but I understand that it's so weird. It's like I don't want to convince anyone
Yeah.
to learn Esperanto. It's just trying to talk about our experiences, and of
Mhm.
course mine are different because I grew up with it, and that also means in terms of the culture that I experienced many things as a child. You know, some of the diversity things and things that we understand or maybe appreciate even more as adults. Also about politics, you know, whatever is going on in the world, I want to hear first from Esperanto speakers how they experience whatever local issue is going on. And I'm not going to name any of them right now. It's just, it was, Okay, let's name one, like Brexit. Like it was so
Okay.
obvious, that we would want to have this discussion. And I just keep thinking that so many things that I took for granted as a kid, it was just not so obvious for other children. That, for instance, I really know people from many, many countries as a child, exactly because of these events. And I would know where Kazakhstan is on the map. Like, there's just, your geography becomes much better because you just want to know where your friends are in the world, for instance. And then you learn from them. And that's the best, it's better to have these conversations with people who tell you about their experiences, who give you, I mean, if we want to stay on the surface, like give you the best recipe of a food, like how you actually make it locally, like which
Yes.
one is the good stuff, and is this really truly, do Hungarians put paprika in everything? Like, no, but we do use it a lot, etc. But
Boy,
it's,
let me tell you though, on that topic, when I was a kid, my mom used to make goulash all the time, and I never liked it. And then I went to Hungary, and I tried some real goulash there, and it was completely different than what my mom used to make.
well, yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
But
And we don't even eat it that much. I don't even understand why goulash is the one. I mean, we have so much food. I don't understand how.
yeah,
How
no.
did this happen? Why goulash? Why exactly? But you can ask, someone. It's an actual soup. It's not what you think
Yes.
it is. It's a soup.
When my mom made it, it was more like a pasta type thing.
Yeah, there's no pasta in goulash. So
Yeah.
that's that. Yeah, you can debunk a lot of things very fast.
Yeah, so maybe my mom should have become a multicultural Esperanto speaker. But yeah, that's
Are
great.
there any questions? I mean, I'm missing, but
Oh,
should we clarify something?
there have been a few. Here, let me show. Here's
Or comments?
Vincio. Says, Kio stranga, miai oreloj estas tre confusitaj.
Yes, pardon,
Not
Vincio.
accustomed to us speaking.
No, it's very weird.
Mi spekti longe, ĉar nur ankoraŭ laboras.
It's like actual trolling than people speaking in Esperanto.
I know. Well, I'm streaming this to my Esperanto channel as well as my. Here we go. Do you think the language will be exchanged step by step or day by day? I mean, the language is growing up to exchange. So, I mean, are you?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but
yeah.
What do you think?
I understand the question as maybe referencing like if the goal is for if our goal is la fina venko, will that happen step by step, day by day? Possibly. So I guess I could just say that Esperanto speakers have a wide variety of sort of goals for the Esperanto movement.
Yeah.
Right.
Some really believe in it. Some really want people to actually speak Esperanto. Some really believe that if the EU adopted it or some other big organization, that would be incredibly helpful. Probably that's true. Mm-hmm. I am not campaigning for any of these things. I don't care if you learn Esperanto. There are many speakers already, who are just happy to use it. Yeah, but I believe, there are many, many, many reasons why people learn Esperanto. It's not just one. And I can say that for the native speakers, there are many, many reasons to teach Esperanto your kid. There is not just one. You just assume it's one. But it's not true. There are so many reasons why you would teach Esperanto to your kid. So most parents are not even from several cultures. They are from actually one culture and they want to give diversity to their children. It's like 50-50, maybe even more those who are monolingual themselves or growing up monolingual. So it's not even just like that all the Esperanto kids are from international couples. I happen to be one, but that's just also not like a general rule at all. like really.
Many couples who use Esperanto at home or teach it to their children grow up speaking the same language, right? And they
Yeah.
choose to use Esperanto
Yeah.
for reasons, right?
Yes, for very different reasons. But most of the time, they just think it's a good language to learn and to teach their children as well. So that's also an idea behind it. It's not that simple because the immersion, the culture around you is different, so it's quite challenging actually to teach Esperanto to your kids because there will be so many people questioning your parenting choices, like you're ruining your kids.
Yeah, I'm sure.
um, and it can be quite difficult. And of course, meeting other children, which is a fantastic way of learning. Of course, we learn from our peers, right? And you don't have that easily, especially if you live in a big, big, big country like Brazil or the US or Canada or China. That's why in Europe, we're very lucky. As a Hungarian person, even luckier because I'm in the middle of Europe. So for me, meeting other Esperanto speakers wasn't difficult at all. And that's luxury in the Esperanto world. So there are speakers everywhere, but in some places you get to meet other people speaking Esperanto. It's just easier and faster. And also in Europe, you go abroad. I mean, if you look at just Hungary on the map, if you don't know where it is, we have 7 countries around us, 7 different languages. So it becomes very apparent that we just need something else. Just you don't learn Slovakian and German and Slovenian and Serbian and Romanian and Ukrainian. I mean, these are different languages around us. And so you understand very fast what the value is in learning other languages. And that's not that obvious in every single part of the world. And at the same time, what's more obvious that the countries that have one strong language, that they do push out the smaller ones. And there's a lot of narratives around, it's not needed. I mean, if it's just a couple of hundred people speaking it, like what's even the point, right? I mean, Esperanto is so not going anywhere. Like, no way. So.
Yeah, right. And I wouldn't even say, well, okay, let me say this. I try to encourage people to learn Esperanto, although I don't really feel like I'm an evangelist for Esperanto. Like I think there's some moral imperative, or the world needs La Fina Venko. Like, we don't need Esperanto to be the worldwide languages. I love Esperanto and Esperanto culture, so I talk about it a lot, especially on this channel. My wife recently told me that she might be interested in starting to learn Esperanto a little bit, and I was like, yes, I was so happy to hear that. But
+1.
But it's not like, it's not like I'm on a mission to fill the world with Esperanto speakers. It's just something that I love, and I think it's fascinating, and I think it can be really helpful. And why would I not want to share that with other people?
Well, it's much more authentic as well. Just talking about your own experience and what it gives you, right? So I have to add, there are many, many native speakers who grow up learning the language, of course, from their parents, and they maybe go to events and they use it. And then as adults, they don't use it anymore. And it's their choice. So there are not many native speakers who actually stay with the language when they are adults. And it's their choice. And sometimes that can be very hard for the Esperanto community because they think, but the native speakers should be the ones, who carry the movement forward, the most idealistic. And they're just like, no, leave us out of this. It's like, leave us alone. You go with your idealism somewhere else, right?
We had a very interesting conversation at NASC a few weeks ago. On the last day of the courses, we all went out for drinks and for dinner at this restaurant that was near the campus. And I remember Alexo Miller, he looks at the person across, we're all just making small talk, and Alexo talks to the person across the table from him. He says, so what are you going to do for the Esperanto community? And then a few people who were sitting around us were like, what? Why would you say that? Like, why is there this expectation that this person who is sitting here at this table has to do something for the Esperanto community. You know,
Mm.
it's like almost like there's this expectation that if you join and you start learning Esperanto, then all of a sudden you have to do something. You have to become an activist or something like that.
Well, you go through phases, right? I
Yeah.
mean, your enthusiasm, you want to convince everyone, oh my God, it's awesome. Everyone should learn it. And then you chill out a bit. And then you don't have that
Well,
anymore.
and I don't think Alexo is even, he wasn't even saying that, you know, or
No, the fact that
it
you
was
are,
just a
I mean,
question, you know, we were just talking, but
no, but
it was
if
funny
we,
to see people's reaction to that question.
yeah. No, it's funny, but if we just take it just a tiny bit seriously, this question, I think the fact that you speak it and that you use it, that's enough. Like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you actually speak the language, you use it for what it is, communication, you know, speaking, most probably the people you speak Esperanto with, even if it's just one other person, is someone very different from you who you would have not met was it not for Esperanto. Probably. I mean, okay, it's an assumption, but it's a fair assumption. Yeah.
I distinctly remember my first week learning Esperanto. It was the very same week that Duolingo first started the Esperanto course, and I spent a long period of time. I probably spent several hours a day for a whole week learning Esperanto. And by the end of the week, I went on lernu.net, and this was back when they still had a Babileo, a chat room
Yeah.
on the website, and I was amazed that after 7 days of learning this language, only maybe several hours a day, I was already able to have basic conversations. And I met this guy who was actually from Hungary, ironically enough, and he thought my username Fingtem was very funny, and had I know only some people will get the joke there.
Was this a man?
Yes, it was a man.
Who finds
But
it funny? Okay.
after only 7 days of learning Esperanto, I was already able to have basic conversations with this guy in a language that I knew nothing about, 2 weeks earlier. And
Yeah, that doesn't really happen with other languages, or no?
not at all.
I don't think so.
Not
I
at all.
see Rafa is asking something. I
Yes.
see a
Yeah,
question.
I highlighted a few questions here. I'm not sure if you can see the chat questions here, but yeah, so we'll go to Rafa's question here. What is your favorite and least favorite thing about being a denaskulo, or a native speaker of Esperanto?
Well, the favorite, I'd say I liked it as a kid and I truly appreciate it as an adult, is truly the type of knowledge that I got to have that I just wouldn't have had otherwise. Like truly the diversity of kids I could talk to, and the type of knowledge that I would like, people would say, but how do you know that from? And it's not like an arrogant, statement. It's just that things that now I understand very deeply that I would have just not known where those places are. Just being able to say, oh, I know which country, in geography class, like I know what's, what we're talking about because I have this friend here or there, and then it's easier to learn because I link it to someone, right? It's from the place we are discussing something, or in the summer after a year at school, I would have these conversations with people that, oh, this is what I learned about your country. This is what they teach in Hungarian schools. Like, is it true? Is this, can you teach me something else? And I'm not so precious about my Hungarian identity. I think that would be very helpful, this nationalistic, like what nations mean. And I appreciate a lot of beautiful things about being Hungarian, and at the same time, I understand I could have been born somewhere totally different, and that would have been very, very different. So that I think that's a wonderful part. The way I was a native speaker, which meant that I could engage with a lot of different people because of the geography of Hungary, where it is, and yeah, and it's very different in the movement where people are, what kind of experience you have. With the internet is very different, but there was no internet when I was a kid, so I think that's quite amazing because the way you learn, I mean, it's much more fun from other kids. right? And that's beautiful. The difficult part about being a native speaker is that growing up, especially, everyone asks, so what is it? What is this? You have to explain it over and over again. Then they question your parents' sanity. Like,
Yeah.
why would they waste their life,
Mm.
teaching you this language? And it's just there are people who are not very nice about it. And as a kid, it's like you think, is there something wrong with this? Was this really a bad decision from my parents? And people can be very mean about it to kids, and I've seen that to other kids as well. And I realized that they do exactly the same about other native languages. It's not just Esperanto. It's not just because it's a constructed language. There are many ethnic languages questioned today, like, oh, why would you still want to learn this? Why is this still important? I mean, English is enough, Spanish is enough, more people speak it. And I see this kind of narrative. I thought it was only about Esperanto because that's what I heard growing up, but now I realize and I empathize with a lot of people who are also questioned, if they teach even the dialect, like they don't want to tone down the way they speak the language, the way they speak the dialect. They are already questioned, like, why would you do that? And like, just learn the proper language. And then you realize, proper language, like, what do you mean? So it's not just Esperanto, but I grew up with that, and that's tough. That's not easy at all. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I get a lot of flack from certain people for learning Esperanto as a second language. So I can only imagine what people would say about teaching that to your children.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting for me to hear you talk as a European, talk about how Esperanto has made you so much more, multicultural and interested in other cultures and things like that, because in America, our culture is almost monolithic, other than, maybe Hispanic populations and especially in the southern part of the United States are, I live close to Canada, which is similar in a lot of ways, culturally speaking, but, where I live, everyone, we have one culture, we have one, everyone speaks one language. Most people have never traveled out of our country. Most people couldn't tell you what the capital of Ukraine is, even though it's on the news every single day, So, and I think of Europeans as being very well traveled and much more multilingual and things like that. So it's interesting to hear you say that from the perspective of someone who lives
but
in
it's
Europe.
It's easier to travel somewhere that is different from yours.
Right.
I mean, I go just 100 kilometers, not even 100.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much that is in miles, like what, 60 miles?
Something like that.
And I'm already in Slovakia.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even need that much, time, money, energy. If I wanted to spend the weekend in any of the surrounding countries, it's not that expensive. It's not that far, it's just easy.
Right.
So I can understand that there are some things that only travel can give you. And I can just imagine how difficult it is when you live in a country like Brazil. I mean, it's huge. You go so far away and you're still in the same even just region, not even like, we're not even talking about leaving the country. You're in the same region. That's an opportunity that Europeans have that no other continent has, basically.
Yeah, right. I'm like, I can drive 10 miles and I'm in Illinois, but there's nothing different there, and even if
maybe they beg to differ, huh? Maybe they beg to differ.
yeah, well, they probably do. We're better than them anyways, but no, I'm just kidding.
It's another conversation there.
We always, in Wisconsin, we always say that Illinois is beneath us. So it's a geography joke.
Yeah.
Here, we have a few different questions that we're getting backed up on a little bit. Here's my friend Rochelle from Forever Learning French. Are there any similarities between Esperanto and French? So she probably missed the part earlier where you said.
Yes, many words, especially words. Yeah.
I would say
it's very helpful. Yeah. Because of Latin, it's
so Esperanto is known as. Sorry, I think we're getting choppy a little bit there. Okay, yeah, but Esperanto, if for people who don't know, it pulls words from several different languages, and I would say French is probably one of the primary languages that
Yeah,
both words.
Latin. And because of that, if you learn Esperanto, then it's going to be very helpful with learning French or languages, Latin-based languages. And it's going to help you with a lot of words in French. Lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's see. I have a good question there from Ben Jones. I'm gonna maybe we can answer this one a little bit quicker, or maybe not. What's the secret to learn 3 or 4 languages, in your opinion? Do you have an opinion? First of all, by the way, how many languages do you know, Stella?
Like properly?
Yeah. Well,
I speak English, Hungarian, and Esperanto well, and then I speak Dutch, French, and a bit of Portuguese. It's not a lot. It's just a few. Yeah.
Well, for a European, maybe it's not a lot, but for most people in America who hear that, they're shocked. Yeah. Every time I tell someone how many languages I speak, I have to qualify. I would be like French, English, Spanish, Esperanto, Thai, blah blah blah. But it's like, but to varying degrees,
Yeah, but it's a very famous Hungarian polyglot, Kato Lomb, who used to say language is the only skill that it's worth having, even at a small, tiny level. Okay, this is paraphrasing, but it's like if you speak a language not very well, it's still worth it. Like it's still giving you a lot, even if you just know a few sentences or just speak basic things. So yeah, what I would say about learning languages, like why I learned those languages that I do speak, you have to love the culture, because at the end of the day, you will consume things in the language, and if you don't like the things that are produced in that, so if you don't like it, then it's very difficult to learn a language, and then you don't like anything that's in the language. Like I can understand that people just love French. They love the sound of it, they love the movies, they love the songs, they love baguettes. Okay, eating baguettes doesn't improve your French probably, but it's like
the cultural experience.
No, but it's the cultural experience, or you want to travel there. Of course, this is for Esperanto. This is always an issue, geographically, where is it? But but it's funny because Esperanto wants you to travel everywhere and not just one place, one spot, but like all over the world. That's also something. I'd say, and courage is needed. Like you will make mistakes, and like just be okay with that very fast. And then you improve much faster if you're willing to make mistakes. And you will be making mistakes, like that's a given. But like being okay with it is the difference that it makes, These are the two that comes to mind. And I used to teach languages, and all I can say is that I encourage people to, to make mistakes, and it's okay, and just try it. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like
and
what
speaking
you said.
is not the most important part,
Right. Yeah. And when you go to a country, being able to speak a little bit of the language is so much better than not speaking any at all.
Yeah.
Because then at least you can try. It doesn't have to be perfect grammar.
Yeah.
It's so much.
For instance, in Hungary, if the only word you can say is köszönöm, just being polite to say thank you, we're happy. Like if that's the only one, it just shows some kind of respect, something, and just to say hello or thank you. Just those things, it engages people more, and then you have more connections, and then you will have a better time. So yeah.
So here's a question that is perfect for you, Stella.
Okay.
What do you think is the value of Esperanto literature?
Yeah, as a person whose job is Esperanto literature. Well, first of all, literature. I mean, reading different kinds of perspectives. If you read Esperanto literature, you get different kinds of perspectives written in a language, and that you can understand, so you don't need translation. That's already good, I think. It's perspectives. I mean, this is why we read literature. That's what I'd say. Any kind of literature. But Esperanto literature is just giving you a perspective of the time we live in and a world we live in. And that's the impression I'm getting, And in short, yeah. We keep coming back to this, but really, if you want, more perspectives, something else, not reading the same things over and over. For instance, okay, small digression. I organized a literature competition, short story writing competition, and the topic was COVID. Yeah, obvious. But the perspectives, the different stories we got from different continents, the really sad ones, the funny ones, like what you focus on in this that really happened all over the place. It's just fascinating. It's just truly fascinating. So I'd say that's the best best that I can come up with, best
Great.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and this springboards right off of it. Do you have a favorite Esperanto author or a favorite period in Esperanto history?
Yeah, it's funny because Rafa was asking a question. He's awesome. So I'm looking forward to his first book.
Yes, I agree.
As a consider, favorite period I remember. Oh no!
Wait, I'm sorry.
Why am I no, I disappeared. Am I back?
Yep, you're back. Sorry. Okay, I didn't hear your answer. So,
about the periods, like which one is the best period?
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, the one I can remember. I mean, I remember what internet did to Esperanto, and it's fascinating, honestly. Like as a kid, just starting to understand, and we just felt that internet is going to be awesome for Esperanto.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that. And yeah, it's not a very popular opinion, but like when Facebook showed up and we could connect, like internationally, that meant a lot because we had all these national, getting people together and like connecting with your peers from school. But I mean, Esperanto people made Facebook awesome internationally because we so wanted to connect. It was really filling a hole for us to, look at photos after events and being able to share them easily without having your own website, which you didn't know how to make. I mean, that was quite specific. Today it's easier, everything is much easier. But I remember the time before, internet was something that is kind of ubiquitous. I mean, now it is, but I remember when that didn't appear and what it did to the Esperanto movement is very different. With all the good and the bad, we wouldn't know each other. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation. I remember of the time when I was hoping that I could call my friends and see their faces while we are talking, I still remember that. And I'm not that old and I still remember it. And now it's a reality and I'm very grateful for that.
Me too.
So, yeah.
I often ask myself, how is it possible that the Esperanto movement got kicked off before the age of the internet? But, I guess people must have been very diligent about corresponding with pen pals.
And I was as well. I had pen pals. I still have the letters.
Wow.
That was the only thing that my mom, would post for me every time. Mom, can you just send this to my friend in France? And so I remember that. And I remember how fast everything changed and people want to connect. I mean, we are social. I'm a sociologist. We are social beings. We want to connect. If people want to connect, they will travel. They will write all the cards. They will patiently wait for the postman. They will organize events on the phone, in person. Now we use the internet because it's more convenient. Still, things changed a bit, but wanting to connect, wanting to be together, wanting to use the language, it just looks different. It's the same general experience. It's the same sentiment, I'd say. Yeah.
That's great. All right, I'll take one more question here, and I think this is a great one because this is what a lot of Esperanto speakers hear. Who speaks Esperanto? How do you answer that question?
Who even speaks Esperanto? Some weirdos, a bunch of them.
And a bunch of language nerds. The other question I get all the time is, where do they speak it?
Yeah.
And then the only thing I ever want to say is, La tuta mondo, right? Like they speak Esperanto all around the world.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's
have a
true.
place.
It's true. It's true.
No.
And it's very difficult to imagine that, but it's true. You go somewhere and you will find one person. You will bump into someone. You say you speak Esperanto. Oh, I know someone. Oh, I know. Oh, my neighbor's kid. It's
Mm,
there will be someone. It's going to be
sure.
surprising always what the answer is. So yeah.
Yeah. So Esperanto, it doesn't have a country. There's no place, or there's no. I don't know. It's not a centralized thing, but you meet people, and there's lots of ways of meeting people too. There's amikumu, there's the pasporta servo, which is like similar. It's basically couch surfing
Yeah.
for Esperanto.
Before couch surfing was a thing, Esperanto people already did couch surfing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to say we did it all. I wasn't even alive when Passporta Servo was invented and used. That was in 66, the first idea, 72, the first book, 1972. It's like, it makes you creative. If you want to connect, if you want to travel, it makes you creative to use the language to go with it. Yeah. So it's just,
And then
yeah.
And then Esperanto speakers are always getting together. There's lots of gatherings and
So much fun. If it wasn't fun, honestly, who would want to speak it? Who would want to hang out with Esperanto speaking people if it wasn't fun? If it wasn't just, you learn something new, you have a good conversation, you feel good. I mean, why wouldn't want you feel good?
Yeah. Rafa, mi parolas Esperanton. A lot of people are Esperanto nerds, but I should say a lot of people in Esperanto are language nerds. They're just people who enjoy languages.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And I never enjoyed languages. This is the funny thing. I like trolling people, but it's actually true. I don't really care about languages and don't enjoy them. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it's not fun learning a language. It's just I do because I see the value, and I don't even really like talking about it that much. No.
Well, you and I are different then.
Yeah, probably.
Here, I know I said no more. I would take one last question, but here's one last one. Where can I buy books in Esperanto?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Unfortunately, we are bad at this. We're very much behind, in terms of Esperanto books. Yeah, the World Association has a bookstore, and of course Amazon, but you have to be like careful with it. You can find PDFs. You can find, probably we can. It's easier to put it in the comments to help you with that.
Yeah,
but.
We're
working on it. We're working on it to make it better and faster to get you books. Yeah.
You can find a lot of books online for free in Esperanto. Like true. Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland type things. Things that are old.
Oh my God, Alice in Wonderland! You have to buy from the British Esperanto Association. That edition is the most gorgeous. Mm-hmm. It has just come out.
Yes.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Even the drawings are made in Esperanto with all the, the graphics are altered to have the Esperanto versions of them. Just buy those books. Mm-hmm. So if you're British, you're very lucky that you have a wonderful association that sells the best books, the most beautiful books. Yeah.
Or otherwise, even attending, like if you go to the UCO, there will be a Libro Servo there,
Yeah. Whenever you go to events, you can buy books easier. It's difficult. This is a downside. It's difficult. It depends on your local association. The French are good at it. Brits are good at it, but then Brexit doesn't help again. So
All right. There's not a ton of books on Amazon.
No, and they are bad.
Yeah. Well, I have my books published on Amazon.
Oh, so I'm sorry. Why didn't you just okay, so buy Aaron's books.
No, it's okay.
Please.
Don't
buy them then.
I think Amazon it could be a great tool for Esperanto publishing. You have to get a little bit creative with it though, because they don't actually allow you to publish books that are purely in Esperanto.
That's
So
right.
what I did is I published the same book in English and in Spanish. I'm sorry, English and in Esperanto, combine them into a single hard copy of the book, and then sell that. So it's a workaround, but it's okay. But
Yeah, but
maybe.
Amazon doesn't support Esperanto. That's very clear. So it's
Mhm.
like, this is how you can see. I mean, but it's not just Esperanto. This is the thing. Like, it's not just Esperanto, the language that's not supported. Like, you have to pay attention to that. What are the languages that are acceptable to speak? Like, when people will not frown when you say, I'm learning this language, it's very limited, the amount of languages that are just approved,
Right.
and then all the smaller languages, like, why would you want to learn that? And it's not just Esperanto. Let's just like pay attention, to these
Yep.
questions, and don't ask these questions. It's rude. People want to learn languages. Let them.
Yeah, right. The other place though that I would say I personally get a lot of reading practice, and I'll go back to this again. We talked about this earlier, is Wikipedia. It's free, it's all online, and there's lots of articles on Wikipedia in Esperanto. So I think
All the volunteers, thank you for their work.
mm,
You're amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and you can find articles on whatever topic interests you. So
That's right. Yeah.
do you want, before we go, do you want to say anything about the Ink Concurso? You mentioned it earlier, or Bo Belarto.
Everything, yeah. But it's for Esperanto speakers, but just so that you know that our language community and literature community is very alive and well. So I organize so-called Bobelarto at Inc. And basically, if you want to write in Esperanto, so like literature, like novels or maybe short stories, start with short stories or just scenes, come to us, and that's what we do. And the other thing that we do is organize book readings with current authors. So if you want to know who actually writes in Esperanto, but of course this is for Esperanto speakers,
Sure.
then we organize those as well. And the World Congress is coming up, which is awesome. It's going to be in Montreal, and it's going to be the first time that Aaron and I are going to meet in person, actually.
Yeah.
So we might do a live
Looking
from
forward to
there
that.
as well.
Sorry, I had
And
to plug in my laptop there for a second because it's about to die. But anyways, go ahead.
yeah, and Inc. Concurso, so the last one is Intercultura Novello Concurso, so it's a short story competition. And currently the topic is night travel. Is that correct?
Night voyage.
Yeah.
Nocta Voyaggio, right?
Nocta Voyaggio. And the languages that we accept are Esperanto, of course, Italian, because the World Congress is going to be in Italy, in Torino next year. And we accept Russian and Ukrainian. These are the 4 languages. So if you speak any of these, we accept short stories in these languages until the 30th of September this year. And we can put all the links, in the comments.
Yeah,
and then you can
I'll
see
try
them.
to remember to go back and put those links in.
I'll help you with it.
Okay, perfect.
So that's it. But actually, I'm just so looking forward to. This is the thing. Like, you use the internet to meet people using Esperanto, and then you're so looking forward to meeting them in person. And sometimes it's 10 years until you meet, and it's okay. And these are, it's not like fast satisfaction. Sometimes you wait really years and you make these bonds and you have these friendships, and they're true, real friendships. And it takes many years to meet in person. And it teaches you patience, and it also teaches you that it's all very worth it in the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, I distinctly remember learning Esperanto I started learning only through Duolingo and a little bit through Lernu and like some YouTube stuff. But it was all like basically solitary by myself online. And I did that for several years. And then I distinctly remember for the first time using the Passaporto Servo, actually in Montreal. That was the first place I ever met an Esperanto speaker. And I went to his house and I spent the night with him and his wife, and I think they had a young daughter. And I was like, what in the world? Like this language that I've been learning for the last few years is not just an online thing. Like there's real people who actually speak this. And, and
Who
now
go
here I am.
online and then they have these discussions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
And
it's a
then
fantastic
going,
question for everyone. Yeah, who's not a native speaker. Like, do you still remember who the first person was you actually talked to? Like, who was the first person you actually had the conversation? It's like, this works. Like, wow, this works.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember him opening the door and he says "Saluton," and that was when it became real to me that this is not just like an intellectual exercise; it's a language, and there's like people involved in it.
That's such a beautiful story.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it was just really cool. So I highly
well,
recommend.
That's a very, very good point to finish on. This is perfect.
I agree. Yes. Okay, so now that we talk about saluton, and I'll say mal saluton or gis Montrealo.
Gis Montrealo. Gis. Thank you for being with us. Gis.
And thanks to everyone who watched. Bye bye.